All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
There's only one power. Sorcery, voodoo, and witchcraft are all based on suggestion. You have the power to reject the negative suggestions or predictions of others. Think good and good follows. Walk in the consciousness of God's love. Radiate love and goodwill to all. You will gradually build up an immunity to the negative atmosphere, the false beliefs of the world. Look at voodoo and black magic in their true light. See them what they really are. That is to say, they're used by persons who are ignorant of the real spiritual power. President didn't have to happen to President Kennedy, didn't have to happen to Lincoln. They talked Lincoln out of. He said every time I open the Bible, I read about visions and dreams and monitions and warnings. And they talked him out of it. Say, if you don't believe in dreams, yet he was warned. And it didn't have to happen to President Kennedy. He could have read the 91st Psalm, the great protective Psalm, and he'd be immunized and got intoxicated. He'd receive the divine antibody. These people think they know something, but they don't. People who give you negative suggestions and talk about blind magic. They're ignorant. They don't know what they're talking about. When you see them in their true light, the power falls away. There's only one power. The only thing you do is laugh at them. It moves as unity and harmony and is the affirmative power. The negative use of the hidden power is destroyed by the constructive use of power. Remember, there's only one power responds to you when you call on it. The power of suggestion is a hidden power, but the power which creates all things is the hidden power, which is the source of all things. As Trove said, if anybody should be then so ill-willed, so stupid, and so lamentably ignorant of spiritual truth as to exercise the power of malicious suggestion against another person, I pity the person who tries to use it. He will get nothing out of it. He's firing peas out of a pea shooter against an ironclad war vessel. It'll go back to him, boomerang, and he'll kill himself. If you're wishing death for another, you're wishing it for yourself. The other believes maybe in long life. And what happens to you? Doesn't it boomerang? Yes, double force. Curses return home to roost, you know. And here is the great truth. Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob. Jacob is a man who becomes aware of the presence and power of God. Neither is there any divination against Israel. Israel is a man who realizes that God is the only presence, the only power, the only cause, etc. He believed in the supremacy of the spiritual power, the regnancy of his own thought. The word Israel in the Bible means prince ruling with God, a man who gives no power to no person, place, or thing, or any created thing. He gives all power and allegiance to the living spirit within him. So that's supreme, omnipotent, omnipresent, it's all-wise, it knows all. I have no other God. So what had God wrought? The book of Numbers. So Jacob is the man awakening to the truth of being. The truth of the divine presence within him. Israel means a man who believes and knows the sovereignty of the one power, and the one cause, and the one substance, the one alone who lives in the hearts of all men. O God, the psalmist says, Thou art my God, and there is none else. I am the Lord thy God. I am the Redeemer. I am thy Saviour, and there is none else. And from the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, there is none else. But against the children of Israel, not even a dog shall lift his tongue. Each one, finally at the end of the year, each one examined his horoscope in my office and laughed out loud, as I've just mentioned. There were negative predictions contained in each horoscope which had never come to pass. In fact, where financial losses and accidents were indicated, success and health were encountered instead. Each had not only prospered, but had been promoted in his respective college. Had they read their horoscopes in advance, the negative suggestions would have been impressed upon their subconscious mind, and undoubtedly all the things predicted would have occurred because they would have accepted the suggestions. And the incredible power of suggestion is when you accept it, your subconscious brings it to pass, good or bad. And each morning and night, they took a book of meditation which I gave them, Quiet Moments with God, and they saturated their minds morning and night with these eternal verities, neutralizing, obliterating all the negative patterns in the deeper mind, for the lower is subject to the higher. So it was a spiritual horoscope, meaning that as they implanted harmony, beauty, love, peace, right action in their subconscious mind, they activated these powers of God, and they came to pass. As thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. If you believe in negative predictions, that is what you will, of course, experience, because the law of life is the law of belief. According to the law of allegory, Abraham left Chaldea in search of the true God. The Chaldeans were active in the elaboration of astrology, and they ascribed everything to the movement of the stars, thus profanely likening the created thing to the Creator. Abraham, which means the father of the multitude, or our father, realized the world is governed by its maker and first cause, and he gave all allegiance to God, the only presence, power, cause, and substance. Astrology can be understood as the psychology of antiquity, because these 12 powers are characteristics that are in all of us. I have known sensitives and psychics who read the past, the present, and the future with extraordinary acumen and mental sagacity, revealing tendencies and characteristics of individuals without any knowledge of astrology. Some of them never heard the word. Some used a deck of cards, made predictions with amazing accuracy. Some were clairvoyant, clairaudient. Others used numbers, revealed past episodes and present plans and purposes. The whole process of the psychic, or the clairvoyant, or the sensitive is simply that of tapping the subconscious of the person. In other words, before the psychic tells you anything, you've told the psychic everything, because he or she gets into a passive psychic receptive state and is in rapport with your subconscious mind, and of course can see the plans and the purposes, the fears, the dreams, the divorces, whatever it is that's in your subconscious, because the thought and the thing are one in mind, except you change it. And you have told the psychic everything before she or he tells you anything. And if there's any validity at all to astrological predictions, it is not because you were born on August the 5th or July the 4th that you have certain characteristics. Rather, it is the result of the collective unconscious beliefs of the race or mass mind regarding that period of the year. The late Carl Jung said, "Insofar as there are any really correct astrological deductions, they are not due to the effects of the constellations, but to our hypothetical time character." In other words, somewhat similar to the I Ching. Whatever is done, born, or done at this moment of time has the qualities of this moment of time. This is similar, as I mentioned, to the operation of the I Ching, the wisdom of China, which goes back about 5,000 years, in which Carl Jung points out in his foreword to the I Ching that whatever happens in a given moment possesses inevitably the quality peculiar to that moment. Down through the ages, the race mind has given power to the constellations and signs, believing that they exert an influence over us. In other words, the whole idea of the influence of the signs under which we were born is based upon the collective idea or belief in the subconscious of the race. All of us are a part of the mass mind, or race mind, that's 4.5 billion people, and all of us are affected by the beliefs of the collective unconscious, unless we can free our mind through scientific prayer, which means the contemplation of the truths of God from the highest standpoint. Then we will neutralize the toxic effluvia of the mass mind. We're all in a psychic sea, and these influences are impinging on the receptive media of our minds. Telepathy is rampant, isn't it? And therefore, that is why you keep praying up. The law is we become what we contemplate. It's the nature of love, as it is the nature of hatred, to change man to the image and likeness of that which he contemplates. For example, where within the subconscious of 200 million people in this country is a superstition or mass mind belief that a president will meet some untimely end or something every 20 years. This, of course, is rank superstition. It's in the mass consciousness of Americans. It doesn't have to happen if the occupant of the White House saturated his mind with the inner meaning of the 91st Psalm. He would be completely immunized and got intoxicated, that nothing in the world could touch him. President Reagan, for example, let us all realize that he's always surrounded by the sacred circle of God's eternal love, that the whole armor of God surrounds him and his entourage wherever he goes or wherever they go, and that where he is, God is, and God has preserved him, and God watches over him, and no evil shall befall him, or no plague shall come nigh his dwelling. Angels shall watch over him, bear him up, lest he dash his foot against a stone. Thou hast preserved me, thou wilt compass me about with songs of deliverance. So he's always surrounded by the sacred circle of God's eternal love. The whole armor of God surrounds him and his entourage. He's immunized and God intoxicated, impervious and vulnerable. And as you realize that, you neutralize that frightful, obnoxious belief or thought pattern promulgated by so many people. It's wrong to predict evil for another. When you do it, you're predicting evil for yourself. Furthermore, you're contaminating the minds of a lot of people. And you're instilling that into their minds. And they begin to think and they begin to fear. Would you like 1 million people or 2 million or 100,000 people thinking negatively of you, that you're going to die or be shot or something? I don't think you would. So let's get rid of that superstitious, nonsensical idea. If you say you were born in Taurus when the sun was tropically in that sign, actually in the sidereal zodiac based upon the fixed stars which is used in the East, this might be a shock to many of you. The sun would be in Aries. So if you told an astrologer in the Far East that you were born in Taurus, you know, the 15th of May or something of that nature, he said, oh no, you are not. You were born in Aries. If you said you were born in Gemini, he'd say, no, you were born in Taurus. All the delineations you read about are derived from empirical observations. Supposing you were born May the 10th, an astrologer in India, using the sidereal version of the zodiac, would say the sun would be in Aries, which he would be right. Consequently, the description of tendencies and characteristics would be entirely different, wouldn't they, than of someone classifying you as born in Taurus, based upon outlines given in the various textbooks under that particular sign. For they all more or less say the same thing, don't they? They give you characteristics and tendencies and proclivities, you know. You're born in Taurus or Aries and Gemini and Cancer and Scorpio and all that. All these are within you. The 12 disciples are within you. They're not men. When you discipline these faculties, they're called disciples. And he said, you are my friends. Because when you see peace where discord is, love where hatred is, joy where sadness is, light where darkness is. You use discernment, judgment. You judge according to the eternal law of love and based upon eternal verities and the truths of God. Your judgment is as a robe and a diadem. So you learn to discipline all your faculty. You hear the good news. You hear the opposite. When someone says sick, you're hearing the voice saying, I'm whole, I'm perfect, or you realize the miracle of God is happening and the healing power of God is flowing through them now. You hear the opposite. You're disciplining your hearing, aren't you? You know, Pat went to the astrologer and he said, I'll give you $1,000 if you tell me where I'm going to die. And she said, "What on earth do you want to know that for?" He said, "I'll never go near the place." So you see, these things can become funny too, you know. The little boy was asked, he said, "Does your mother read the cards?" "Oh, yes," he said. Does her predictions come true?" "Oh, yes," he said. "She read my report card," he said, "the other night, and she predicted accurately what my father would do when he came home after he saw it." That was a pretty good prediction. So these astrologers you see in the East, they forget your label, Aries and Taurus and Gemini. They analyze you according to the period of time, your date of birth. They would then base their findings on the mass mind belief and empirical observation of thousands of samples taken over the years, and would in all probability be very similar in their observations and deductions. They don't pay any attention to your sign at all. Along the same lines, a good graphologist can look at your handwriting and give an excellent delineation of your characteristics, tendencies, aptitudes, and predictions of future successes. They can also tell whether you're psychotic or schizophrenic, and all this, amazing, or if you're sick too. All this again is based upon empirical observations regarding the style of writing and the shape of letters. Books are written on it, plus the intuitive or psychic perception of the operator. The zodiac, with its 12 signs, symbolizes the 12 tribes of the Old Testament, you know, and the 12 apostles of the New Testament. You've heard, I'm sure, of the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Jacob, and the 12 mansions of the moon, 12 gates of Heliopolis, and the 12 hours of the day, and all these things, they all represent the same thing. The 12 months and the 12 hours, all these 12 faculties are within you. The ancients said Maimonides, and by the way, Maimonides was one of the most learned of all Jews. And he said, directing all their attention to agriculture, gave names to the stars, derived from their occupation during the year. That's how they got their names, you know. Having remarked that in the annual revolution, the renewal and periodical appearances of terrestrial productions were constantly associated with the rising and setting of certain stars. In other words, celestial changes brought about terrestrial changes. These ancient primitive people noticed that, and they noticed the position of these stars relative to the sun. The mind, by a natural operation, connected in thought these terrestrial and celestial objects, and they gave names to the stars based upon the terrestrial objects with which they were very familiar. Thus the Ethiopians living in the Nile named the stars of inundation, or Aquarius, those stars under which the Nile began to overflow. Stars of the ox or the bull, those stars under which they began to plow. Stars of the lion, those under which that animal, driven from the desert by thirst, appeared on the banks of the Nile. Stars of the sheaf, or of the harvest, virgin, those of the reaping season. Stars of the lamb, and stars of the two kids, those under which these animals were brought forth. The famous great scholar Volney and Ruins of the Empire, and the origin, of course, of the zodiac. He brings out these great truths also, that these names came from men, primitive men, along the Nile, thousands of years ago. And, for example, the Ethiopians, having observed that the return of the inundation always corresponded with certain stars, you know, stars appeared in the heavens, they correspond with certain stars, they name them. Aquarius, meaning the water star, and for the rising of the beautiful stars which appeared towards the source of the Nile, and seemed to warn the husbandman against the coming waters. They compare this action to the animal, who by his barking gives notice of danger, and he called this star the dog, the Sirius, which means the dog barker. That's how these stars got their name. In the same manner, he named the stars of the crab, those where the sun, having arrived at the tropic, retreated by a slow retrograde motion like the crab or Cancer. He named stars of the wild goat are Capricorn, those where the sun, having reached the highest point in the annuary tract, rests at the summit of the oratory gnomon, and imitates the goat, who delights in climbing the summit of the rocks. He named the stars of the balance or Libra, those where the days and nights, being equal, seemed in equilibrium, such as that instrument. Stars of the Scorpion, those where certain periodical winds brings vapors burning like the venom of the scorpion. Men would say by a natural metaphor, the bull spreads over the earth the germs of fecundity in spring, the ram delivers the skies from the maleficent powers of winter. He saves the world from the serpent, emblem of the human season, and restores the empire of goodness, which is summer. The scorpion pours out his poison on the earth and scatters disease and death. The above, of course, is a brief synopsis of the distinguished research scholar Volney in his article on the worship of symbols. You don't worship a symbol, you find out what the symbol means, don't you? So the zodiac, we learned, of course, is an imaginary line or belt in the heavens. It is not a physical body and has no gravitational pull. This is why astronomers and astrophysicists are disquieted and perplexed by people who believe in it. It's an imaginary thing. The zodiac is within yourself. Wisely, however, scientists completely reject the so-called influence of the 12 signs, realizing that the astrologers' claim that the influence is due to gravitational attraction is completely absurd and nonsensical. Makes no sense at all. Habituated to associate the symbols, the ideas of their archetype, the mind at last confounded them. Then the same animals whom fancy had transported to the skies, because there's no goat up in the sky, returned again to the earth, but being thus returned, clothed in the livery of the stars, these primitive people claimed the stellary attributes and imposed on their own authors. Then it was that people, believing that they saw their gods among them, they demanded from the ram of their flock the influences which might be expected from the heavenly ram. In other words, they began to worship animals. And they prayed to the scorpion, not to pour out his venom upon nature. They revered the crab of the sea, the scarabaeus of the mud, the fish of the river. And by a series of corrupt but inseparable analogies, they lost themselves in a labyrinth of well-connected absurdity. That's the origin of your zodiac. Doesn't it make you stop and think? They fought from heaven. The stars in their courses fought against Sisera in Judges, the 5th chapter of Judges. Undoubtedly, this means that Sisera realized that his horoscope based upon astrological findings was unfavorable. As previously pointed out, This is the psychology of antiquity. And the ancients said that if you were born under a certain sign, you would have a certain psychological makeup, such as special traits, characteristics, tendencies, and aptitude. But all the signs are within you. They're all within you. Which would be dominant for you? Maybe certain characteristics are more pronounced than others. But all the 12 powers and attributes of God are within you. If Sisera believed that the stars were against him, naturally it would be done unto him as he believed. For the law of life is the law of belief. And to believe is to accept something as true. You can believe a lie, but you can't prove the lie. But if you believe it, whatever you consciously really believe with your conscious mind, your subconscious will accept, whether it's true or false. All of us are brought up with certain beliefs, opinions, and attitudes towards life. All of us are conditioned differently in our youth. However, there is no fatalism, because we can change our lives by tuning in with the infinite and claiming that what is true of God is true of us. As we think, speak, and act from the standpoint of the infinite presence and power, so will we cast a spiritual horoscope for ourselves, based upon wisdom, truth, and divine law and order. When people predict the death of some prominent person, that's disastrous. They're sending out that negative thought, which lodges in the mind of gullible, fearful people, and then they're projecting that hostility and that fear onto other people. As Job said, "For the thing which I greatly feared has come upon me." Such an attitude of mind could only end in disastrous defeat for Sisera. Sisera could have broken and overcome the negative predictions given to him by the psychic or the astrologer. He could have turned to the God presence within and claimed peace and harmony, love, and divine right action. For there is no time or space in mind. And if you believe in karma, you're not in truth, because you're dealing with time and space theories. In truth, we don't deal with time and space. We deal with the timeless, spaceless being. So wake up. And of course, then his life would have been changed. Sisera was a Philistine and was not acquainted with the laws of mind or the way of the infinite spirit. His defeat was not in the stars, but in his subconscious mind. The Philistines worshipped idols and stone statues in their temples and looked upon them as gods. Many people calling themselves Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Buddhists fear and give power to the swine flu, to germs. Germs are all over you. They're in the air, they're in the skin, and they're in the water, they're in food, they're in everything. They're on your body right now. But there's an infinite spirit within you that immunizes you, and you're healthy and vital. They don't affect you, do they? Without these bacteria, we wouldn't have penicillin, or we wouldn't have yeast, or many other things. There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Some people believe in weather, some believe in black magic, voodoo, evil configuration of the planets. Yet there is no death, there's only life. Age is not the flight of years, the dawn of wisdom. 1 billion years from now you will be alive somewhere, for God is life, and God cannot die. And his life is your life now. No matter who you are or where you are, regardless of any zodiacal sign under which you may have been born, you can call upon the spiritual presence and power which created the universe and which is omnipotent to guide, direct, and heal you. It's almighty. There's nothing to oppose it, challenge it, thwart it, or vitiate it. Surely, the stars don't fight God. God made the stars. God pronounced everything good and very good. If you open your mind and heart to receive, it will answer you and restore your soul. However, if you believe that Saturn is working against you, then the infinite cannot work through you. Rely upon the spirit within, then all things will become new, and all the obstacles and difficulties will melt and dissolve in the same way as the light dispels the darkness. It's like a young actress said to me some years ago, "I knew I would have an accident. I knew I would have more than one. It was in my horoscope, and the Neptune governing my tires There was a malefic configuration. I knew I would have an accident. I read it, and I feared it. She brought it on herself. Neptune is harmless. It doesn't hurt you. There was a time when they didn't know anything about Neptune, you know. There's only one power, God. She brought it on herself. Had nothing to do with the stars. There's only one power. The sorcery, voodoo, and witchcraft are all based on suggestion. You have the power to reject the negative suggestions or predictions of others. Think good and good follows. Walk in the consciousness of God's love. Radiate love and goodwill to all. You will gradually build up an immunity to the negative atmosphere, the false beliefs of the world. Look at voodoo and black magic in their true light. See them what they really are. That is to say, they're used by persons who are ignorant of the real spiritual power. President didn't have to happen to President Kennedy. Didn't have to happen to Lincoln. They talked Lincoln out of. He said every time I open the Bible, I read about visions and dreams and monitions and warnings, and they talked him out of it. Say, if you don't believe in dreams, yet he was warned. And it didn't have to happen to President Kennedy. He could have read the 91st Psalm, the great protective psalm, and he'd be immunized and got intoxicated. He'd receive the divine antibody. These people think they know something, but they don't. People who give you negative suggestions talk about black magic. They're ignorant. They don't know what they're talking about. When you see them in their true light, the power falls away. There's only one power, and the only thing you do is laugh at them. It moves as unity and harmony and is the affirmative power. The negative use of the hidden power is destroyed by the constructive use of power. Remember, there's only one power responds to you when you call on it. The power of suggestion is a hidden power, but the power which creates all things is the hidden power, which is the source of all things. As Trove said, if anybody should be then so ill-willed, so stupid, and so lamentably ignorant of spiritual truth as to exercise the power of malicious suggestion against another person, I pity the person who tries to use it. He will get nothing out of it. He's firing peas out of a pea shooter against an ironclad war vessel. It'll go back to him, boomerang, and he'll kill himself. Yes. If you're wishing death for another, you're wishing it for yourself. The other believes maybe in long life. And what happens to you? Doesn't it boomerang? Yes, double force. Curses return home to roost, you know. And here is the great truth. Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob. Jacob is a man who becomes aware of the presence and power of God. Neither is there any divination against Israel. Israel is a man who realizes that God is the only presence, the only power, the only cause, etc. He believed in the supremacy of the spiritual power, the regnancy of his own thought. The word Israel in the Bible means prince ruling with God, a man who gives no power to no person, place, or thing, or any created thing. He gives all power and allegiance to the living spirit within him. So that's supreme, omnipotent, omnipresent, it's all-wise, it knows all. I have no other God. So what had God wrought? The book of Numbers. So Jacob is the man awakening to the truth of being. The truth of the divine presence within him. Israel means a man who believes and knows the sovereignty of the one power, and the one cause, and the one substance, the one alone who lives in the hearts of all men. O God, the psalmist says, Thou art my God, and there is none else. I am the Lord thy God. I am the Redeemer, I am thy Saviour, and there is none else. And from the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, there is none else. But against the children of Israel, not even a dog shall lift his tongue.
Sunrise, sky so bright, dancing in the light. Life's a roller coaster ride. Hands up, just hold on tight. Paint my dreams in pink, Shadows in the alley, whispers down the street, neon signs and broken dreams, empty hearts, mechanical beats, crumbling towers, concrete cold, lost souls selling what they know, eyes that shine like broken glass, got no future, got no past.